From CBS 2 News, this is a special report.
Good afternoon, everyone. Live look at the Hyatt in Midtown. Transit Workers Union President Roger Toussaint preparing to hold a news conference in response, we would imagine, to at least in part what Mayor Bloomberg had to say. The mayor again blasting the strike as illegal, selfish, and intolerable, among other words. But Toussaint, you would imagine, has a few things to say about that and the state of the strike itself.
He spoke a little bit last night, a very organized sort of mini press conferences with reporters from around town. He walked the picket lines with some of his strikers. Let's listen to hear what he says.
I don't have a prepared statement, but I'd like to address a number of issues that has arisen in the last 24, 48 hours. First, to all New Yorkers, I'd like to apologize for the inconvenience and beg our riders and all working people for their patience and forbearance for the inconvenience caused by our strike. A strike that we maintain that we were provoked into conducting. I just came from a meeting with state mediators, and I'll be leaving from here to resume discussions with state mediators sent in from Albany to attempt to assist both parties to get out of the current stalemate in the negotiations. Let me be very clear that we believe that the pension demands put forward by the MTA are illegal. To impose this on the negotiations is illegal and burdens the negotiations and should come off the table. We believe that if the pension demands that are illegal and a burden to the negotiations come off the table, that would go a long way to us resuming the negotiations and resolving the strike issue. The main holdup has been and is the pension issues. That's not to say that there aren't other very critical issues, some of which I'll go into in a little while, but it is the pension demand that is the holdup. Let me explain that while you may discuss pensions in the course of negotiations, contract negotiations, it is clearly and plainly illegal for any side to impose a pension demand as a condition for a contract settlement. That is what the MTA did. On Thursday night, they submitted a final offer that included the creation of a new pension tier. That is illegal to submit as a final demand or final offer. They have continued to maintain this as the core of their proposals, despite the movement in other areas, and it continues to be improper, overburdening, and illegal, and that should be removed from the negotiations. I want to also address some of the remarks that have been made characterizing our members and our leadership in the course of these negotiations by the governor and the mayor. There's been some offensive and insulting language used, such as referring to our union members and our leadership as thugs, selfish, and essentially characterizing us as being overpaid and greedy. And this is regrettable, and it is certainly unbecoming for the mayor of the city of New York to be using this type of language to the people that the New York City entrust the care of over 7 million riders every single day. So I will say this to Mayor Bloomberg. Why would you characterize the transit workers who comprise 60% of the responders to the World Trade Center disaster as thugs? We were the folks that removed hundreds of thousands of people from the subway system during the blackout not too long ago. We are the people that respond and save lives in the course of derailments and smoke conditions in the subway system. We are not thugs. And that should and it points to a problem at the MTA that apparently is shared by the city fathers and by the state fathers, which is the lack of respect for transit workers. We need a little respect, and the language that is being used is undignified and unbecoming in terms of description of public servants, and we find it extremely regrettable. To New Yorkers, you Your next door neighbor is the transit worker. The person in the apartment next to you, in the house next to you, is the bus driver, conductor, or train operator, the cleaner, the station agent. And we ask you to keep that in mind when you consider the type of offensive language and insulting speech being used to describe your neighbors. And we appeal to you that unlike the persons using this type of language, we are the ones that know the life of hard-working people, and not the mayor. Now, much has been said about the question of that this strike is illegal, and that it violates the Taylor law. And we have pointed out that there is a higher calling than the law, and that's justice and equality. Had Rosa Parks answered the call of the law instead of the higher call of justice, many of us who are driving buses today would still be in the back of the bus. So we want to drive the bus today with some respect, with some dignity, and that's what this contract fight is about. But I wanted to also address the certain inconsistencies, to say the least, with respect to how one views the law. Let me read a quote and then attribute that quote to you. This is I'll attribute the quote at the end of the quote. Amid old McDonald's hamburger wrappers and mouse droppings, we dragged wires from our computers to the keyboards and screens we were putting in place, stuffing the cables through holes we drilled in other people's furniture, all without permission, violating every fire law, building code, and union regulation on the books. It's amazing we didn't burn down some office or electrocute ourselves. At the end of the day, 10 or 11 o'clock at night, we turn it on and we watch what we have created come alive. It was so satisfying, unquote. Ladies and gentlemen of New York, that is a direct quote from a book called Bloomberg on Bloomberg. This was the path that Mayor Bloomberg followed on his rise to become a billionaire of the city of New York, who's now Mr. Law and Order Bloomberg. And that should be noted in terms of the inconsistency, that when you have transit workers stand up for their rights and for their dignity, that we are then called thugs, selfish, greedy, overpaid by a billionaire, right? And we have important issues that we are trying to address in this contract that go beyond the issues of pensions and wages and so on, the treatment of our members. It was Thursday night that I asked Chairman Calico, do you mean to say by your final offer that you intend to be the only major agency in this city and this state that refuses to recognize and commemorate Martin Luther King as a holiday for its employees? It was embarrassed by that fact that they subsequently offered Martin Luther King holiday some 24 or 48 hours after, at their next proposals on Monday evening, they added Martin Luther King holiday to their proposals, begrudgingly, reluctantly, only after they were embarrassed by our challenge. And I say to them, we have other issues that also need to be addressed that go to the dignity and respect that transit workers are due. Last night, I was on the picket lines, walking the picket line with one of our female bus operators who reminded me that she carried her baby until the day before she delivered because of the absence of provisions and accommodations for maternity leave on this job. So she was driving a bus up until the day before she delivered. Those are critical issues that need to be dealt with in these negotiations. We have over 6,000 women on this job now, very different from how it was 15, 20 years ago. And this job needs to stop being an all-male environment run by a male-dominated board that is insensitive and unaccommodating to the needs of young women who are still rearing children on this job and who need to be given due accommodation. And there are a host of issues like these that go to how our members, transit workers are treated. And those are issues that we intend to continue to pursue in this round of negotiations, not in 2 to 3 years, not after more mothers and more children are put at risk, and we are continuing to prosecute these issues in these negotiations. And unfortunately, the MTA, by trying to focus on simply the issues of pensions, hope that all of these issues regarding the mistreatment of transit workers somehow falls off the table, so that they can continue on conducting over 15 to 16,000 disciplinary actions against transit workers every day, so they can use the money, public funds, to feed that machine rather than to service the riders and to provide for the reasonable needs of employees. These are some of the overarching issues in these negotiations that go beyond wages and pensions. The treatment of transit workers is critical, and I think that the New Yorkers have seen a glimpse of what we are talking about when you have the indignity of a mayor taken to his pulpit and characterizing our members, our hard-working members, right, who work, 6,000 of whom work in the subway tunnels every day, right, with the rats and the steel dust and the heavy industrial conditions down there, repairing and maintaining the subway system. Another 4,000 who work under the subway cars doing heavy work, and the 20,000 frontline employees that you see moving the trains, the buses, and handling the work of station agents. Our workforce is extremely diverse. It has grown. The demographics have changed. The authority has refused or failed to catch up with the needs and the adjustment needed to treat transit workers with dignity and respect. And we are getting a glimpse as to why that is the case when you look at the type of speech that Mayor Bloomberg and Governor Pataki has been utilizing in describing the current crisis in these talks. So I'll stop at this point and take a few questions.
Mr. Toussaint, Governor Pataki today appeared to say that he does not think it's appropriate for the MTA to go back to the bargaining table unless you guys go back to work. I think his quote was, if you walk, they should not talk.
Okay. Again, you have a situation where you have the governor and the mayor claiming that the talks should be left to the hands of professionals, and instead standing at a distance dictating the terms and conditions of these talks. And that is the problem. They don't want to come to the table, but they want to dictate the terms away from the table, which is what the mayor has been doing consistently during the sessions in terms of insisting upon a package that has a certain appearance, especially a new tier pension or a radical change in the pension system. I point out that in New York Post yesterday, Mayor Bloomberg was quoted as saying that it's time that a tier 5 pension be established for city employees. So the clear intention here is to obtain pension changes in the transit negotiations and then apply these changes in one way or another to hundreds of thousands of city employees. Our contention is if in fact you can make a case for changes in the pension structure, for a radically new pension system, then the right way to do that is not in the transit negotiations, but to create a round table of the city representatives of the mayor's office and the city, and the other stakeholders, the other labor leaders, NICERS, which is one of the larger pension systems, and others, and have that discussion there about how to deal with any structural problems and funding for the pension down the road. Thank you. Provided that pension comes off the table, that would be a basis for us going back to work and continuing negotiations.
Without a deal, would you go back?
I didn't say without a complete deal, but the improper and illegal imposition of a pension change by one side in these negotiations, that has overburdened the negotiations in violation of the law that Mayor Bloomberg and Pataki and company sworn to uphold.
Can I just follow up on my question, Mr. Toussaint? Can I just follow
Mr.
up?
Toussaint, sir, what about the argument that if both sides were in fact to go to arbitration, pensions would have to come off the table because, as you argue, they are not a mandatory subject of the collective bargaining process? Why not go to that state-sanctioned process?
Well, as I said before, our concern and problem with arbitration is that it removes any say-so from transit workers, and that is precious and important to us. It's for that reason, and for that reason alone, to make sure that transit workers have a say in their future and in their contracts, we are opposed to arbitration as a resolution. But Mayor Bloomberg and Governor Pataki should not have the benefit of standing on the law and violating the law, right? And creating that as the reason why these negotiations can't proceed. We are prepared, unless I confuse the issue, we are prepared to resume negotiations right away, right now, right this minute with the MTA. We wouldn't end the strike as a condition of those negotiations, and we believe that it's improper to impose that as a condition for negotiations. And if the pension issue is taken off the table, that would form the basis for us to ask our members to go back to work, or to recommend to our executive board to go back to work once these outrageous pension demands and these illegal pension demands are taken out of these negotiations. Should not have been there in the first place.
Can I just follow up on my question? What do you think will be
Those reports are grossly exaggerated, and if President Reuter is proven to be incorrect by claiming that 1,000 members crossed the picket line yesterday, then President Reuter should resign if in fact that is shown to be the case. It is grossly exaggerated. It's an attempt to undermine our members' determination and their unity, and that is clearly what is going on here.
What's the practical impact, in your opinion, of Governor Pataki's statements today? I know you talked about what you think he's
Well, the practical impact is that the governor, as is the mayor, is strong-arming the judiciary in terms of using this type of language and laying out these type of mandates. This is not unconnected to the type of onerous fines and penalties that came down yesterday from the judge. They're messaging the judiciary and trying to control the outcome of this deadlock in that manner.
Do the governor's statements, sir, make, in your view, a settlement more or less likely?
Well, I think that the governor's statement exacerbates the situation, if anything. And again, let me address one other point with respect to the pension issue. I refer you to the New York Times article today, which pointed out that the sum total of potential savings that, in terms of employer contributions, that the MTA would gain if it had this pension proposal in place over the life of a 3-year contract would be a sum total of $20 million. Now, it's surprising that the mayor and the MTA was willing to allow a strike to occur and allow over hundreds of millions of dollars to be in revenue to be put at risk in order to extract $20 million in concessions from the Transport Workers Union Local 100. It suggests that there is some other agenda afoot, and that agenda is establishing a new pension principle and whipsawing the rest of the labor movement and the municipal workforce with that pension. And that's unfortunate. And that is who's taking New Yorkers hostage. The mayor and the governor, in order to pursue their agenda, and that principle have taken New Yorkers hostage.
Last question.
Mobilize those members of the other unions, sir.
I'm sorry?
What are you doing to concretely mobilize the members of those unions who eventually the powers that be are going to go after with this pension stuff?
I believe that those other city unions will be speaking to you in this room within the next few hours about this matter. And let me say a couple other things very quickly. Excuse me. Mayor Bloomberg and Governor Pataki, New Yorkers have been treated to a scenario where the leaders of the city and state have gone repeatedly before New Yorkers and held up as a model their handling or mishandling of contract negotiations in the last several years. The notion that it is acceptable to hold cops, teachers, firefighters, DC-37, sanitation, and others out there without contracts for 2 to 3 years is repulsive, right? Housing cost, the cost of gasoline, the cost of food doesn't have the patience that that Governor Pataki and Mayor Bloomberg apparently insist that labor unions have in terms of the need to resolve contracts in a timely manner, so that working people can keep ahead of inflation and keep food on the plates for their families. So I think that there's a real problem when this is being held up as a model. You can speak to no police officer, cop, teacher, fire person who was at all pleased, but who felt nothing but being offended by not having contracts for 2 to 3 years. And it is amazing that they are now holding this up as a model that transit workers should follow. In the Metro-North unions, the MTA for 3 years has failed and refused to give our brothers and sisters out on Metro-North contracts. It is no wonder that when transit workers look at this, that there is a determination to insist that the MTA treat our contract deadline as a serious deadline, because they look around them at the absence of good faith in bargaining, at the nonchalant way in which the city fathers take the need to resolve contracts in a timely manner. Bloomberg he's in no hurry, in no rush to address these issues, and maybe it is very difficult for a billionaire to understand what someone who's making a few tens of thousands of dollars are going through and meeting those bills and paying to put your children through school. Maybe there's that type of disconnect. But we believe that working people in New York can more better identify with transit workers and know instinctively that the thugs are not on this side of the podium. We are not thugs, we are not selfish, we are not greedy. We are hard-working New Yorkers, dignified men and women who have put in decades of service to keep this city moving 24/7. We wake up 3 and 4 in the morning to move trains and buses in this town, and we will continue to do that. And that's not the behavior of thugs and selfish people. Thank you.
Thank you.
TWU President Roger Toussaint holding a news conference, standing firm in his position as we are in day 2 of this strike, defending his position and defending his people.
Anybody looking for a sliver of hope here to try to get this thing resolved, not happening, at least at this point, as the war of words escalates. We have a guest right now.